So this evening we're very blessed to have Daniel Cheesman come and take our pulpit. And I met Daniel before he'd accepted the role of CEO at Brighton Hove LGBT Switchboard, which is what, of course, Daniel does now. Daniel was branch director of the Brighton and Hove branch of the Samaritans, where he'd been a listening ear volunteer in the beginning, and then, of course, worked his way through to branch director. And paths crossed at a community forum event where Daniel, you've forgotten, didn't you? Where Daniel spoke. So Daniel has an MA in Gender and Queer Studies and has researched the importance of a truly inclusive church to a gay Christian. So should feel very at home here in our little community. Speaking with him, I've met a man who is passionate about equality and not afraid to do what it takes to make a difference. He's also a man who thinks with his heart. So it's my great privilege to welcome to our pulpit this evening, Daniel Cheesman.
Thank you, Michael. Wow, what an introduction. I didn't quite recognise myself in that description, but thank you very much. So I've come to speak tonight. It's a privilege, really, it's a privilege to be here, and somebody probably goes by my description as a bit of a lapsed Baptist. Feels a bit odd in many ways to be here, but I'm really pleased to be here, and thank you, Father Michael, for inviting me to speak. I was kind of asked loosely to speak about stewardship, so that's what I'm going to do this evening, sort of weave my journey to hear this evening, my journey through life so far, and stewardship, and talk about what stewardship means to me as well within sort of that journey from a Samaritan through to my role currently at Switchboard. So before I do that, I thought it'd be good to sort of think about some definitions for stewardship. So a few dictionary definitions here, and a few good old Google and you Wikipedia things. But so some definitions for stewardship. So stewardship is now generally recognised as the acceptance or assignment of responsibility to shepherd and safeguard the valuables of others. Stewardship is a theological belief that humans are responsible for the world and should take care of it. Christian stewardship refers to the responsibility that Christians have in maintaining and using wisely the gifts that God has bestowed. In business, it has been often used by CEOs to denote the concept that as a steward, you try to leave the company in a better shape for your successor than the one that was handed over to you by your predecessor. I won't make any comments about the charity that I've just taken over. And then finally, stewardship theory is a theory that managers left on their own will act as responsible stewards for the assets that they control. So a bit of food for thought there, and that really got me thinking about what stewardship sort of means to me. The other challenge I had coming in this evening was, are you going to be controversial? Well, I'm not sure whether my journey today, I might have left bits out, perhaps, that were controversial, but you never know. So we'll see what springs to mind. So stewardship, what it means to me. So I want to take you back a little bit to the year 1999. Imagine me, if you will, as a very shy, a very awkward, a very introverted sort of 21-year-old who found himself at worshipping at a Baptist church in Crawley, Creepy Crawley. Good old Creepy Crawley. I was brought up in Horsham. I went to school at Church of England School in Crawley. Didn't come from a family of faith at all. I just ended up at Church of England School. And through friends, really, I'd found myself invited on an Alpha course and went along to Alpha, and people might be familiar with Alpha. It's a 10-week sort of introduction to Christianity, and I found myself kind of praying the prayer of commitment and sort of becoming a Christian, and what that meant to me sort of back then in 1999. So that very shy, awkward, introverted 21-year-old was encouraged by the Baptist church to sort of get involved. And it's the first time thinking about it, I heard the concept of a steward. I was asked to be, I was invited to be on the steward team at the church, and the steward team at the church was a really important role. That's part of being on the steward team. When you were rotated to your particular week, you had to set up the church. Stewards here tonight who've set up the church. It's been great. So when I was rotated on, I very proudly, with the responsibility I've been given, took that role really seriously. So set up the church, make sure that the numbers were up on the board. We did have a number thing on the board. Sorted out, helped with the communion, and made sure hymn books were out and things like that. And it's the first time as an adult that I remembered being given responsibility for anything, and actually that felt really good. As that shy, awkward, introverted 21-year-old, to be asked to be responsible for something was something that I responded to really well. And for me, that was the first lesson in thinking about it, what stewardship means to me, and it's that of responsibility and being responsible for something, whether that's an organisation that you might be part of or a relationship you're part of, but that idea of being a good steward and being responsible. And Christians would believe that God has called us all to be good stewards for the things that are entrusted to us, whether that's our time, our talents, the world, the things around us. So responsibility is the first point, what stewardship is about for me. And then that 21-year-old obviously got a little bit older than 21 and still very part of the Baptist church. I got very involved with the community there at church, and I found myself being asked to get a little bit more involved with community activism. So there in my mid-20s I was involved with an organisation called CLAY, standard for Creative Living Active Youth. I was working with a bunch of other Christian young people in Crawley doing community activism. And that ranged from painting fences to clearing out ponds to visiting older people in day centres and dishing up tea and eating cake and all those wonderful things. But I was very accountable for the community we were working with, accountable for the little bit of money that we were entrusted with. We were given a bit of money as a group of young people. And accountable with the community in which we serve. So different, I don't know if people are familiar with Crawley, but Crawley as one of the sort of the new towns in the 1950s is set up for 13 neighbourhoods. Some of the neighbourhoods in Crawley are quite recognised as quite deprived areas. We were working with a few, and through the youth work that I did with Clay, I then got a paid job working for a charity called Spurgeon's, a Christian charity, Spurgeon's Childcare. And I was working there in a neighbourhood called Bewbush as a paid worker, leading a community project and working hand in hand with the community. And for me, being accountable is about not assuming, not doing to people. People don't want to be done to, but sometimes you need to work with people and help them. So the second thing for me was about accountability, really. So with responsibility, I think the two go hand in hand. Responsibility and accountability go together. So then before I knew it, my mid-20s, I'm managing this project in Crawley called the Base Project. I'd suddenly become the shy, introverted Daniel person. I was suddenly leading a local branch of a national charity. Didn't really know how that happened at all. I'd sort of learnt to be a little bit more extrovert in how I come across. People who even know me now, I'm still quite shy, I'm still that introverted. My personality profile, I'm still a very introverted person, but I guess I've learnt over time the techniques to present and appear a bit more extroverted. So that for me was the first time I'd been in that role as leader, and for me being a leader and a leadership role, something that's just kind of from that moment leading the Base Project in Crawley is something that's just sort of continued with me. I'm not somebody who's actively sought leadership at all, and I think you can think of many bad leaders around the world, and there's one not that too far across the pond, who is not responsible, is not accountable, and it's a whole different ball game. But for me, if you want to have a trinity, accountability, responsibility and leadership sort of go together. And then came the tension really in my journey, that all the time I've been part of the church, so I was there at the Baptist church for 10 years, I kind of had this inward battle that nobody knew about, the fact that I was gay, and the fact that I was a Christian. And for me, at the time, going back to my 20s, the two for me were binary. You couldn't be gay, you couldn't be a Christian. That's what I thought then. It's a load of tosh-wash now. Now know it for what it is. But at the time, I came out relatively late, I guess, in some ways of thinking. I was 30 when I came out and moved to Brighton. And that sense of responsibility and accountability, I felt it was really important that I was true to the people that I'd been part of community with for 10 years. Crawley Baptist Church still has a really special place in my heart, in my journey. Got friends there. I don't know if people are familiar with the Baptist system, but if you're a Baptist, you become a member of that church, you become a member of that community, and you have to resign, unless you're booted out, you have to resign from church membership. You'll be pleased to know I wasn't booted out, but I decided to sort of resign. And in my resignation, I wrote a long letter explaining, and I asked the minister at the time if he would read that letter out to the congregation, sort of telling people about me, who I was, the fact that I was gay. And I guess part of that was me, in a kind of way, giving a bit of a leadership role in wanting a debate within that church community at the time about there are people, there are sons and daughters and husbands and what people in your congregation who are struggling with who they are, and perhaps aren't being honest about who they are. I know that letter was read out, and I hope it helped. Out of 200 people that heard it, only 2 people got in contact with me, which is slightly disappointing, but I guess, whatever. So that led me really, church-wise, into sort of a few wilderness years, and then I found what for me has been my new church. I'm not talking about the clubs and the bars in Brighton, but they could be. I've certainly frequented many of them. But I found Samaritans. I had a big gap in my life because I wasn't part of a church anymore, and I wanted to continue giving in some way. And I'd responded to an advert. Samaritans had always been on my agenda, really. I remember being a soap opera fan back in the 80s, Kathy Beale, who's famously been resurrected from the dead, was a Samaritan back in the 80s, and I think for me that kind of was like, oh, I want to do a Kathy Beale. So I joined Samaritans and sort of trained as a listening volunteer. I haven't really looked back, so I don't know if people are that familiar with Samaritans, but Samaritans actually, despite the name, is a non-religious organisation set up in the 1950s by the preacher Chad Vara. He set it up really as a response to what was happening around him. One of his members of his congregation, who was 14, she started menstruating, wondered what on earth was going on to her body because no one had told her these things happen, and she took her life. He, enraged by the time, thought this can't happen again, and he very much set up Samaritans back in the early 1950s as to be the sort of 999 for suicidal people, and he set it up himself in his office in Stevens and Walbrook up in London, the church there, thinking that people would come to be counselled by him. But what actually happened, while people were waiting to see him, they just got chatting to the people who were there making the tea and the coffee in the waiting room, and there the concept of Samaritans began, really, that one human being can listen to another human being in their hour of need. It's as simple as that. We're not superheroes with red cloaks, we're just people who've had a bit of training, an empathetic ear, and can just listen to somebody else. And that concept of the power of talking and being listened to by a stranger is, I think, slightly biased, but it's very important. So being a Samaritan has taught me the other aspect of what I want to suggest stewardship, what it does mean to me, is that of attitude and the ability to give of myself. The journey that I've been on so far, that giving of myself has been really important, whether that was in the community setting in Crawley to Samaritans. And then the parable of the Good Samaritans kind of always resonated for me. I remember hearing it at school, and I picked it a little bit for the Samaritan link, because my name, because the roles I've had here in Brighton, sort of known for Samaritan. But actually, I think the parable of Good Samaritan tells us a lot about stewardship. The parable teaches us that we are to be the neighbour to the person we encounter in our daily lives that's in dire need of our help. We're called to be good stewards of our fellow human beings, other precious children whom we meet on our own journey in life. Our love, time and mercy are not confined to our families and friends, but they're to be extended to other people that really need us, regardless of their race, religion, gender, sexuality, culture, ethnic, never say that word, their ethnic background or social standing. And for me, I check my attitude every time I'm on a telephone call with a caller. Not to be judgmental, not to make assumptions, and just to be with them and to respond with them however they come, whatever they present with. And again, that power in the listening stranger. As of end of March this year, I found myself in the role of CEO at Brighton Hove LGBT Switchboard. I guess looking at the journey I've been on, you could argue it was the natural next thing for me. It's one I'm incredibly privileged to be doing. I'm really proud to be doing it, and it's not proud about myself. I'm proud to be there, responsible and accountable to the LGBTQ communities within our city, responsible to a charity that's the oldest LGBT charity in the city. It's been around 40 plus years. Therefore, I have responsibility to do good to all the people that have gone before me, the people that set it up, the people that nurtured it. And really looking to the future, it's about kind of what that charity, what we continue to be now. So that concept of giving of myself is still really important. The reading didn't stop at the parable of the Good Samaritan tonight. I asked for it to go on because I thought it was really interesting that straight after the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus talking about what it means to be who is your neighbour, we're presented with the Mary and Martha incident. And again, I think it says something about stewardship. Now, I can really resonate with both Mary and Martha, probably more Martha since I've been in post in this new job. I've been running around a bit like a headless chicken, trying to be strategic in what sort of happens in this new role. And I was challenged last week. I saw a film called Tawai, the village of Tawai. I might have pronounced it wrong, but people might be familiar with the anthropologist Bruce Parry. He did a few things on BBC a few years ago. Now he's made a film. He revisited the nomadic Penem tribe of Borneo, who are a hunter-gatherer tribe. And the film very much looked at through the lens of the Borneo tribe, but also looked at the difference that there are between societies within the northern hemisphere and societies within the southern hemisphere. And the fact that, in the main, the northern hemisphere, the way this society works, is we tend to operate looking at the bigger picture. We're forever looking at how things join up, we're looking at the strategic side of things. But in the southern hemisphere, especially the Penem tribe and other examples, people live much more in the moment. It's about the here and now. For the hunter-gatherers, it's about where your next meal's coming from. And a lot of scientific studies have been done, and actually the Penem tribe come out again and again and again as the most peaceful tribe of people on earth. So for me, that Mary and Martha, the last point for me about stewardship is that of balance. I think Mary and Martha, both are good stewards. Martha's there being the good host, but Mary's there sort of in the moment. And for me, I think as I've thought about my journey today and thinking about the situation I'm in now, running an organisation that at times can feel quite frantic in serving the needs of our community, it's about finding that kind of balance, really. And for that reason, I think both parables sort of have something to say to us, or have something to say to me, if not you, this evening. I hope that's been helpful to just give you a journey of give you an insight into my journey so far. And as Michael said, yeah, I'm here to work with the LGBT community in Brighton and Hove, and yeah, it's exciting times ahead, I think, really, in terms of how we might work together, things we might do. So, thank you.